Alright, and hello everybody, I'm the Sweeper27, and welcome to another Dokkan Battle video. We have another Twitter discussion that we're going to go over here today, just to see everyone's opinions, because, you know, the last couple of Twitter videos that I've done have absolutely popped off, and the conversation today is going to be, is damage underrated? Is dodge, damage reduction, are all these things overrated? Does utility really matter that much? So how valuable truly is damage? And a lot of this comes from this one clip from a recent truth video. I'm going to play it in its entirety. I'm going to mute up real quick, that way we can kind of get our bearings on the situation.
Alright, so UI Goku just did 0 damage with 80 attacks. So Tech UI Goku is power crept already. Okay, AGL UI Goku can handle fucking business, though. Don't worry. He'll sit him down. Get out of here. Oh my god. Hey, whoa.
Alright, not truth swearing in the first couple of minutes of my video. That's a, that's a bit of a problem. But yes, this brand new fight that we have right up here up against Golden Frieza and, or not Golden Frieza, Frieza and Goku. This is the new hardest fight in the game, and it has this really annoying ability that a lot of recent content has been getting, where it is if you don't cross a certain damage threshold, your damage then becomes 0. And I don't know the exact specifics, but I've heard the number that it has to be 10 million damage once you get past his damage reduction, once you get past his defense. If you aren't doing 10 million, it does 0. And that is a pretty toxic ability right there, especially since if we look here, you're not able to stun this character, you're not able to seal this character, and you're not able to debuff this character, which is certainly very tricky. Like, we are complaining about the Beast Gohan event for the longest time, and that was 4 million, if I'm not wrong. If you weren't doing 4 million damage, it was going to 0. This is over double that amount of the threshold. Now, I don't know what that Beast Gohan's defense is, or its damage reduction is. We could pull that up a little bit later in this discussion if we really wanted to. But as it stands right now, it is a huge difference. Essentially, you have to be doing 1/10, bare minimum, of this character's damage, or their entire health bar with your damage. 1/10, otherwise it does nothing. Now, that can be one of two things, basically meaning you hit this guy 10 times, he's dead, or vice versa. You can hit this guy a billion times and do absolutely nothing. And he also has a couple of other little tricky mechanics here that makes it a little bit more difficult. Now, this is translated, so obviously this isn't on the global version of the game, so this is the JP Dokkan info, just with the translation on. Now, if you get him below 50% of his HP, he actually gets an extra 100% attack, meaning that this super attack effect is essentially, he's doing roughly a 5.6 million, which is incredibly difficult to live. I've actually seen clips of Beast Gohan, you know, the best character in the game, people who we glaze up and down. I've seen him actually be able to take damage once we get deep into this fight, because this isn't an easy fight. If we look at the start of this phase, like, yeah, 30 million HP, that's really not a lot. This is a pretty, like, easy form. Not doing a whole lot of damage right here. I mean, a pretty weak super attack effect, all things considered. But once we get to this Android 17, it's where things start to get a little bit trickier. So yes, he has double the HP. He's still not doing like a ton of damage on his normals. His super attack effect isn't huge, but he does a couple of things that are really annoying. Out of the gate, he has a seal, 100%. Very, 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 very annoying. And on top of that, he has a 100% chance to lock one of your character slots. So what's going to happen a lot of the time is you're going to kill this guy in one phase, 1 to 2 phases. Most likely one phase, just with how powerful a lot of our units are. So the character that you have in slot 1, there's a high potential chance that they are going to get locked right here, meaning that if they're not one of these characters who can eat this right out of the gate, you're going to get cooked. That is a problem. And on top of that, this guy actually gets stronger each turn that you do not kill him. Now, 60 million HP with like some of these super powerful like superhero team, movie bosses, Reps of U7, Universal Survival Saga, it won't be super hard to get past this, but there are a lot of teams that are very good. Majin Buu Saga, Power Absorption, Majin Power, these teams that are very good, but they move slower as opposed to doing really big defensive numbers or damaging numbers. This guy is actually a wall that breaks a lot of the game. It's not even the rest of this. It is this guy. This guy is a wall. This is a skill check and a half. I normally hate that phrase, skill check, because there are just certain times where you can't do anything. But this guy is a weaker unit killer. Then on top of that, if you're somehow able to get past him, you have this phase. And this phase is somehow more toxic. It has the same ability with each turn. They get stronger. But this, they nullify dodge, meaning that if you're not running the Tech UI Goku, who has the domain effect where you're able to actually nullify boss's ability to negate dodge, there are a lot of units that you can't just run in this fight at all, which is really problematic. And it's even more problematic when you factor this guy in. There's a chance that you do actually have MUI on your team, but he gets locked in a weird rotation, he gets floated off, you come into this turn, you have a couple of dodging units, you don't have the domain up, and you're screwed. That is a problem. On top of that, he's basically doing 1 million normals, which is pretty huge, and his super attack effect, 3 million, that's nothing to sneeze at. 3 million is pretty crazy, especially once you factor in everything on top of this, and this number can go up even higher. If it takes you a long time to kill this guy, which it probably shouldn't, but let's just say for whatever reason it does actually take a long time for you to actually wipe this guy out. If we double this super attack effect, he's at a 5.5 roughly, once you factor in this. Yeah, roughly a 5.5 million super attack effect. Now granted that you would have to fight this guy for 10 turns, that's not going to happen. But that is something that you have to consider. That is pretty deadly. And then you come into this phase and everything can be over in a heartbeat because you get walled off. Some of the characters who needed to stack weren't able to get stacks. Weaker characters who weren't able to do this, that, or the other, do attacks on their passives. It doesn't matter. This entire fight is just full of toxic abilities. And to make this even worse, this character's super attack effect, they don't buff their stats, they actually debuff you. So if you have Cell Max in slot 1, a character who can do a lot of damage, I don't actually know how Cell Max performs in here, but I'm just using him as an example. Let's say Cell Max would roughly do 12 million. Let's throw out a random number because I don't know. Let's say you would do 12 million. With this debuff, Cell Max would do 0 damage. Beast Gohan would do 0 damage. Just because of this tricky little thing right here. If this guy's super's in slot 1, and if we're looking at his super cooldown effect, where is his cooldown? Oh, he has a 0 cooldown? Oh, so he's guaranteed to super slot 1 like every single turn. Okay. Damn, that's actually way trickier than I thought it was. So he's basically supering slot 1 every single time, meaning that every slot 1 character is going to be getting debuffed by this unless you're able to dodge this. You're able to dodge this phase, which is something to be noted, or anything like that. But pretty much you have to dodge in this phase, which makes it a little bit tricky that this guy does this. So why is damage being considered underrated? Now, for the longest time in the community, there are two sides. Well, I guess there's not two sides, but for the sake of argument, we're just going to throw this out here. There are the people who love putting full crit on characters. There are people who love giving full additional to stacking characters. There are people who love to see characters at their maximum offensive potentials because big number go burr. Now, I'm someone who looks to play a little bit more defensively. Now, my reason for playing defensively is because I am not a whale. I don't think that, going for damage when you have characters who aren't at their maximum potential, I think is a little bit of a foolish decision. That is just my opinion. I would much rather have a character who has 69% in their hidden potential system have some dodge so that they have a higher chance to survive these attacks because they're not fully built up with their stats. They don't have all their hidden potential tree filled out. That is my opinion. I think that if you are a weaker character, or if you're a character who is not at their maximum potential, throwing in dodge to help subsidize their kit, you're missing out on these stats. So giving them a chance to dodge, giving them a chance to survive, I think is the better way to go. Now, if you have fully rainbow teams or whatever, that becomes a little bit of a different discussion. They have their stats fully built up, meaning you're going to have more HP, you're going to have this, that, and the other, so you can kind of throw in some more crit, you can do this, that, or the other, to get those big attack numbers that much more impressive. I don't really see a problem with that, unless it's a character like Topo, who Topo's a character who kind of needs dodge, for example, but that's also a character who has built-in crits, and that's another part of this discussion. There are so many characters who have super effective against all types built in, so many characters who have guaranteed crit, so many characters who can do this, that, or the other, just built-in baseline. So why would you really put that into the hidden potential system? Why are all these discussions even being brought up? And I saw this one clip on Twitter, and I got a little bit cheeky right here. So this is from someone named Iggy. I don't really know a lot about them. I don't know if they make content or anything. But just really quick, we're going to watch this clip. We're going to have it in 2x speed. I already have that pulled up. But they said right here, pause the thing. They said the offense who doesn't matter crowd looking really silly, it would seem. Now, they're referring specifically to this fight. They're not just saying in general that people who say that defense is better than damage is better than whatever. They're just saying specifically for this fight, a lot of people haven't been using this argument that offense doesn't matter ever since this team dropped. So if we see here, he's specifically referring to this brand new summonable unit who has the ability to dodge and then do crit counters every single time that they get hit. Well, it's not guaranteed crit counters, but the more that they do, the higher the crit chance gets up. You understand what I'm saying? So they did a bunch of attacks right out of the gate, and you saw that all those counters were crits. They're going to do a couple super attacks here. Some of them are crits, some of them are not. And we're going to see that they do 0 damage on all of these, which is actually pretty huge because, again, this is a brand new summonable unit in a brand new event. Now, after the super attack effect, they were actually able to do the 10 million damage right there. You saw that was a crit, but they were still able to cross this threshold, still being able to do a ton of damage, getting them just to a little bit of a sliver of HP, where we then have Evo Vegeta, who is able to wrap up the fight. Now, I did get a little bit cheeky here. I did say, notice how you still got the KO, though. That turn, I just thought it was being a little bit funny. Because to be fair, that is true. That is true. So even though that there were so many turns right there, so many attacks that did 0 damage, they were still able to win that turn. Now, why is that? Now, if we look over here at UI's abilities right here, now this is a little bit insane. So a character who's doing guaranteed crits, essentially, again, it's not actual crits, but it's 77%. You're basically critting every single time. And having 300% attack at the start of turn, doing a bunch of those counters, was doing 0 damage. Now, after they did their super attack effect, obviously they got 50% offense right here, they got 50% offense right here, and I don't know if this includes them. It doesn't specify self-excluded, but it says all allies get an extra 60% attack and defense for 1 turn. I'm going to assume this is self-excluded, so I don't think that UI gets this extra 59% right here, but after they did all their super attack effects, they don't have anything in their passive, like they don't get 100% attack and defense on super attack effect, for example. But just those extra stats that they were able to get once they were able to do all of their supers. Again, these supers are doing literally nothing, but once we get to these crits, now they're doing that damage, and again, very easily able to cross the threshold on top of doing all of those additionals that they were able to do, and the fact that they were crits. So, where does this conversation come from? And I'm someone, again, who I think utility is better than offense any day of the week, because, like, I'm not going to sit here and say that characters who do big damage are bad. Like, one of the best characters in the game, which there's a lot of contention on, a lot of people like to dick ride this character, a lot of people like to undersell this character, which I think is a little bit crazy, is Broly. Now, Broly is really freaking good. He is not a slot 1 unit. He never has been. He's never pretended to be one. I don't know why people really hold that against him. It's like, he's not designed to be a slot 1 unit. People weren't really complaining that you couldn't put the 7-year anniversary LRs in slot 1, the 8-year anniversary LRs. People weren't really complaining about that at the time because there were other options who could go into slot 1. Now, Super Bosses, I could kind of see why that was a bit more of an argument, especially on release, because Super Bosses, to this day, outside of Cell Max, and I guess, I think this is Movie Bosses. Outside of, like, Goku Black, I guess, and Cell Max, who can really go into slot 1 at the time? Like, I guess Jiren can go into slot 1, but I don't know if you'd really run him on Super Bosses. This Golden Frieza for the first couple of turns could. You definitely can go into slot 1. You can go into slot 1 because of your dodge. Broly, Chilai, and Lomo, if you get lucky with orbs, they can go to slot 1. But I can definitely see the argument you can go to slot 1 at the start of the fights. So I can see why, at the start, people were complaining. But this is very clearly, like, the most slot 2 unit of all time. They do a lot of attacks, they do all this, that, and the other, and then once you're able to transform, this is probably, to this day, the most potent offensive unit in the game. I may be wrong, but, like, they at least have to be up there with what they're able to do. So if all you value is damage, Broly is one of these, like, the gods of the game. But so many people, like, to this day, actually undersell this character. And a couple of people, when I talk to them on Twitter, I think people think that I underrate Broly. I do not. I am a firm believer that this guy is really good with everything that he's providing. It's just what he provides on his teams, I don't think is necessarily super great. Because so many of these teams are able to blitz and go through super fast. That is, until we get a fight like this. Now, I don't know if Broly would be super good for this fight, because obviously he's going to have type advantage in this first phase. You're going to absolutely murder it. But I think going through this phase too quickly is a little bit of an issue, because then you enter this guy really fast. Now, obviously, he's not going to be type advantage against this. He's actually type disadvantage. But he's launching so many additionals, and he has so much attack built in, that I think he should still be able to do a very passable amount of damage. It's kind of once we get to here that I think Broly might actually be skill checked just a little bit. Because a lot of people do Broly one of two ways. They either feed into what he does really well by giving him extra damage, giving him extra additional. That way you can feed into what he does best. Or some people like to, you know, help Broly out. He does have a couple of weaknesses. This is a character who, like, yes, he can take normals. Supers can be dicey in certain situations. So giving him the option to dodge is a very valid way to build this character. And I don't really see a problem with either way. If you want to feed into what this character does best, make him more powerful, more power to you. If you want to give him that dodging capability, again, more power to you. Both, I think, are pretty valid. It's just the problem is, if you do go that other route, essentially he doesn't have a hidden potential system if you go full dodge, in this fight specifically. But then once you get to this phase, he should absolutely murder, especially if you're able to have his domain activated, which you probably wouldn't. I mean, unless you went like Goku Black's domain, like in this section, and then the domain goes away, you're able to do it here. I could see that being very potential. But if we're looking at what he does, like, yes, he's good. Again, no, we're no Broly slander in my chat, all right? All right. Not today. He's getting 300 stats, which is kind of becoming like a baseline for a lot of these brand new characters. He does have the guaranteed guard, which is nice. While he has his domain up, he gets an extra damage reduction. He gets extra attack when he's attacking. He's launching guaranteed additional supers. He has that nice crit chance. And then he gets another additional when he's at 24. If we're looking at what he's able to do, he's giving himself a lot of stats here. I would imagine this is probably one of the better characters for this fight specifically, if you're able to protect him all throughout here. Now, again, Broly's base kit can be hit or miss, especially because, like, what if this guy gets locked in slot 1 against 17? Yeah, he has guard. He's not living. I don't even know if he necessarily lives normals. What are your normals? 600 with guard, but type disadvantage. It would roughly still do around the 600k range. So you would definitely take damage if he got locked in slot 1. Probably like 148,000 per hit. Someone test this for me. If I have any JP players, if someone can verify that for me, that would just be my guess off the top of my head. But a super would outright murder. There's no doubt about that. But are we going to sit here and act like what Broly does is bad? No, we're not. This is, like, again, one of the best offensive units in the game. And we can talk about another really good offensive unit who does something that is very similar and is on the same team, Cell Max. Now, if we look at what Cell Max does, this is another one of these, like, really stupid characters who does just a lot of things. If we look right here, boom, another 300 stats at the start of turn, which is super, super nice. If I'm not mistaken, this is a character who can get guaranteed crits or close to it. If all 30% damage reduction when you receive a hit. Does he not have crit built into his passive? I thought he did. Hold on. Let's read what Cell Max does real quick. So he has an entrance animation where there's an artificial life form or super boss category ally on the team. And then for 3 turns, he gets an extra 100 to stats. He has guaranteed guard. He launches an additional, and he launches an additional that has a 50% chance of being a super. He gets 300 to stats at the start of turn. Each time he attacks, he gets 1 key and 20% attack up to 100%. Each time he gets hit, he gets 1 key and 100% defense. He performs additional attacks that have a 50% chance to be a super. If all allies in the turn are artificial life form super bosses or movie bosses category allies, he gets an extra 250% defense and 30% damage reduction. When there is not a superhero category ally on the turn, he gets an additional 250% attack and 30% chance to crit. There he is. So he has crit right there. And then when he gets hit by a super attack, he gets an additional super attack for the turn. And then when you activate his active skill, he temporarily raises attack, does ultimate damage to the enemy, and then he gets 999 defense for the turn, and then all enemy attacks get targeted towards this character. So this is one of these characters who, like, he's launching casually 30 million super attacks multiple times throughout the turn. If we're looking at what his super attack effects are, he's greatly increasing attack 50% for 1 turn. Ooh, and debuff. That's actually pretty nice. Not for this fight, but that's just nice in general. And then he gets 50% right here. So both super attacks, he's getting 50% offense for 1 turn, which is super nice, meaning you're absolutely going to blitz through some of these events, which is good. But I do think that there is a conversation to be had here where doing too much damage is a problem. Now, why do I say that? You can murder this guy in 1 phase. You can theoretically murder this guy in 1 to 2 phases, depending on your opening rotations. Again, 1 to 3 phases, depending on your rotations, and then right here, 1 to 3 phases. But if you're running a super offensive team, like an incredibly offensive team, 1 turn, 1 turn. Oh, well, now we're here on turn 3. We have Broly, Chilean Limo on the rotation, and we're screwed. There's nothing we can do here unless we have a team protection ability, but I think your team protection ability is turn 4? Yeah, turn 4. So if you get this guy on turn 3, you're not able to do anything. You go too fast, which is the problem. There has to be a balance between your offensive and your defensive capabilities or your utility, otherwise you get screwed. Because again, it is possible that you can one-face this guy. If you have really good offensive RNG, like you get like Goku Black, Cell Max, and Broly all in the same rotation. You give Goku Black a bunch of rainbow orbs, so he launches a bunch of additionals right there, building up his passive. A lot of them might even potentially be super attacks. You could outright destroy this guy in 1 phase, especially, again, if you have Cell Max and Broly, you have Big Bad Bosses activated, Broly's going to be launching a lot of supers, Cell Max is going to be launching a lot of supers, especially if he gets tagged by a super. Now, if he gets tagged by a super, unfortunately, this part of the fight does seal, but again, we're just saying this for like argument's sake. Then we get to here. This is a skill check. You can't, like, you have Broly, Chilean Limo here, you're screwed. Now, you wouldn't want to bring them anyway, but I'm just throwing that for example because Super Bosses right now, it is a very good team. It's a very powerful team, but it does have flaws. A lot of orb-hungry characters, a lot of characters who can't necessarily go into slot 1, a lot of characters who can't tank unless there's very, like, niche specific things happen. A lot of characters who have to get hit a bunch as well. If we're talking about, like, Cell Max has to get hit 5 times. Super Easy A, Goku Black has to get hit I don't even know how many times he has to get hit, but he has to get hit quite a few times. So that is probably why some people underrate damage, is because they go into these situations where they do too much damage, they move too quickly. Your characters who need to get stacks, they aren't able to stack. And that's also something that to be said about enemy HP. 30 million might sound crazy, but not really. Because again, you're able to one phase this guy, and you're able to kill this guy in 1 to 3 phases, depending on your opening RNG and what characters you have on your rotation. So let's look at Broly. Broly is another fine example that we want to bring up. Broly is someone who can only transform from his 5th turn from his first appearance. I do want to show this on screen. Yeah, right here. Can be performed turn 5 from his first appearance. So if you get this guy in slot 7, let's say you're running Goku Black as your leaders, you get this guy slot 7, that means you have to have him on turn 3, turn 5, and then turn 7 is the earliest that you're going to be doing that. Now, let's go again. Let's say we kill this guy in 1 turn. Let's say we kill this guy on turn 2. Let's be generous, say we kill this guy on turn 5. Uh-oh, we're now on turn 6. We don't have a Transform Broly. What are we supposed to do? Nothing. Especially if we have to transform like Goku Black on this turn, because we're going to have his domain up. Meaning that that's even more problems. We're doing too much damage. We're moving too quickly for all these things to happen. Now, does that really happen a lot in this event? I would argue probably yes, because this is... He got here on turn 7. So again, by using my argument, Broly could have his domain up at this point. Let's just ignore that this transformation's up here. I would argue that getting to this point on turn 7 is probably pretty slow. So let's see, that did 1 turn for you, 2 turns for you, 2 turns for you? Because this is actually his second rotation, because you can see in the clip he actually has taken... the boss has already taken damage. So yeah, we'll go by the baseline that if we're looking at this character, Iggy, was able to one phase this, beat this guy by turn 3, beat this guy on turn 5, then turn 6, was able to do like half the damage, and then on turn 7 was able to wrap things up. Now, there is something right here that does kind of need to be said specifically about this boss as well. Now, this is a pretty toxic ability, but if this is worded correctly, when they drop below 50% HP, not only do they get an extra 100% attack, but they actually lose 50% of their defense. So instead of having 2 million defense, they're only going to have 1 million defense. I don't necessarily know how much that factors in. We were seeing that MUI Goku with a 15 million attack stat while doing crits was not able to beat this threshold, even though that he was definitely in the clip under 50% HP. So I've seen people throwing around that you have to launch a 38 million super attack to do damage to this character. I don't know if that is with this activated or not, and I don't know if this is being mistranslated as well by just the free Google Translate or whatever when you're using the tabs. So if someone would like to correct me in the comment section down below, feel free. I love to learn more and more things about this game. But what is another, like, really good offensive character? Oh, this guy. So, why do a lot of people think that damage isn't necessarily as important? Well, there's a very common argument that any decent damage character, or excuse me, any decent defensive character is going to be doing a lot of damage as well. And I feel like this is kind of the cornerstone of that character. So for his first 5 rotations, I guess you can technically say 7 if you include his active skill turn, if you're able to use it when his passive wears off and you don't have to use it beforehand. This guy is untouchable. Like, truly, truly untouchable. So if we're talking, we get this guy at slot 1, in this exact same scenario that we have up here, turn 7, you could do the team protection ability. Because, yes, turn 7, that does seem pretty deep into a fight, but you get Beast Gohan turn 1, you get him turn 2. I'm just going to go ahead and close this tab because I keep opening by accident. Turn 1, turn 3, turn 5, this guy's untouchable. You get on this exact rotation, pop the active skill, he would still be untouchable. Now, granted, he would get debuffed by the super attack effect right here, meaning that he could probably do less damage, but I feel like that's not really here nor there. This is, I feel like, probably a bias in people's mind when they think about it. So let's look at another really good defensive character. This one right here. So transformed. This is a character who gets more damage depending on how low the enemy's HP is at the start of turn. Or is it at the start of turn, or is it just any time? No, it's regardless. So this is a character who's really good against like phases like this, where they have a lot of HP. He launches a lot of additional, so let's just go ahead and look at it. 180 stats is a little bit low, but this is a character who greatly stacks attack and defense in his base form, so you can kind of mitigate that. He has guaranteed guard, 18% damage reduction is low, but it's better to have it than to not have it. When he's performing a super attack, he gets an extra 180 attack, and then if he has more than 30% HP, he's launching a guaranteed super. Or, excuse me, he's launching a guaranteed additional with a 70% chance to be a super. And then he's going to be doing more and more and more damage with each single one of these supers, because each single time you drop below one of these thresholds, boom, he's getting extra 30% here, he's getting extra attack here, extra attack there. And if we're looking at his super attack effect, he is getting 50% for one turn here. So, again, very great defensive character, but a lot of that has to do with the fact that he can stack. And if you're able to keep this guy protected and give him as many stacks as possible, again, I do want to show this. So that's 30% attack and defense stack. You're able to get this guy a lot of those. You transform into this deeper into the fight at full HP. I would imagine this guy not necessarily being able to one turn, but if you were getting really good RNG with your supers, I could see this guy absolutely murdering him. Now, am I overestimating? I don't know. Does this guy actually cross that HP threshold? Because 10 million is pretty scary when you think about it. Like, all things considered, there are a lot of units who I have not seen in this fight, so I may be talking completely out of my ass here. But I would imagine if you're able to keep this guy safe, because, yes, this is a dangerous fight, but this isn't a fight that's going to be putting a lot of, like, threats on Vegeta necessarily. Because he does have his guard in his base form, so all of these normals, except for maybe this one, all of these normals, he's going to be able to tank them pretty well. It's going to be the supers that are going to be a little bit scary, so you would maybe need to transform with him prematurely, and if you did transform with him prematurely before you're able to get a lot of these stacks off, I could see him being one of these characters who gets outright walled. So, let's go ahead and look at a bunch of characters who just outright of the gate, who I think get walled. Let's just go with, like, recent releases. You are not a recent release who gets walled. I don't know about you guys. If you were put into slot 2 and 3, these two units specifically, and you have like MUI or SSBE who are able to give that extra offensive support to them, I could feel like getting that extra offensive support, these are characters who would be able to break through that wall. Cell Max is the character who I would imagine would be able to break through that wall. Kefla, with all of her stacking, definitely would be able to. You probably could with your super effective against all types. I don't think that you would be able to, even with your domain activated, just with how many normals you launch, I don't actually think you'd be able to crack, especially being type disadvantage. I don't think you would be able to crack the wall. This is a character who definitely cannot crack the wall. He's a very defensive unit. We're going to bounce back to you. I don't know if you would be able to, because you actually have very low stats, all things considered. And at this deep in the fight, you would actually lose your crit. So I don't even know if Angel SSJ3 Goku would be able to do anything in this fight specifically. Let's just continue looking. You are a character who would be, like, if you were able to get Frieza through here, I feel like Frieza would actually be one of the better units for this fight. I think if you were able to get a lot of stacks, perchance you would be one, but I think you can get walled out. These are two characters who do not struggle at all in the slightest. I would be very interested to see if you would struggle or not. Again, I haven't seen any footage. You don't struggle. You do not struggle. I can't imagine you would struggle. If you get a lot of dodges, you wouldn't struggle because you'd be doing your guaranteed crits, and crits kind of ignore all the enemy damage modifiers or whatever. So, I mean, looking at it, just based off of what my initial expressions are, there actually are a lot of characters who I think outright just get walled. I think there's probably only 3 or 4 teams that can realistically beat this category, or categories that can specifically beat this fight. Repsi Universe 7, Universal Survival Saga, Superheroes, and Super Bosses. I think right now, those are probably the only 4 teams that could comfortably be able to do this. Now, there are probably a couple teams that I'm missing, but I'm only looking at, like, modern releases from this year. Like, I don't think we're going to be busting out Majunior by any means. I don't think Majunior does anything in here. Oh, the Heroes team, you know, dude, actually, no, I take it back. The Heroes team, where's he at? Where's he at? Actually, where is he at? What the hell? Where is Limberberger Super Saiyan 4? Hello? Oh, dude, if you're able to go really fast, this would be one of the best units for this fight. That's not possible, but if you were, he would be a god. So, I would say, specifically for this fight, yeah, perchance damage is underrated. Just like looking at it, a lot of these characters probably do get walled out. Or am I underestimating a lot? Wait, how did I end up on the global side of things? What? Go back over here. I ended up on the global version, so I probably clicked on the tab by accident. But yeah, this is kind of an interesting discussion, because, like, damage is something you need to do for this fight. But if you go too fast, you're going to get screwed. Because let's look at also, just for the same sake of argument, characters who, if you go too fast, you get screwed. You get screwed if you go too fast. Same with you. You get screwed if you go too fast, get screwed if you go too fast. I'm not entirely sure about these guys, but I wouldn't imagine it. You're a character who kind of likes to go a little bit slower. It's your 4th turn from your first appearances when you're able to do your standby, and you standby for 2 turns, I think? Let's see. What do you do in your standby? How many turns is it? Ends his own standby from his 3rd turn, and he needs 24 counts. Okay, so realistically, you get this guy turn 1. You're able to transform with him on turn 4. And then after that, you'd kind of go God mode. So he doesn't necessarily matter. He feels like he's perfectly designed for this fight. He's kind of like the Limit Breaker Super Saiyan 4 last year, except he's a little bit more future-proof than that unit, unfortunately. I'm a huge defender of that. This is a character who would get suffered from going too fast. This is a character who would suffer from going too fast. This is a character who would suffer from going too slow. You're not really running any of these guys in there. Mr. Boo wouldn't be able to do damage. This is a character who, again, you would kind of want to speed blitz. This would maybe be a character who would struggle if you go too fast. Struggle if you go too fast. Struggle if you go too fast. Yeah, these two struggle if you go too fast, if I'm being honest, man. Not being able to transform with them, or not being able to get enough dodges to do your crit. This is actually probably a dead unit in here. Your type disadvantage in the final phase, and the third phase nullifies dodge. You're probably dead in here. This is a brand new summonable unit who's dead in here. Broly, I mean, Broly can maybe be caught if you go too fast, again, depending on how quickly you're able to destroy all of these fights. So you have to find that, again, it's finding a happy balance, in my opinion, between utility, damage, and defense. That's why, again, I'm a huge fan of characters who do a lot of things, and that's why I feel like this is one of the better designed units in the game. Just because, yes, he isn't doing, like, a lot of damage in his base form, but on his super attack effects, he's actually buffing the whole rotation. Then he has this super crazy domain that's buffing everyone, giving them dodging capabilities in fights where you're not able to dodge. He has the counters as well. He is doing a lot of things. I like a character like this a lot more than I do a character who, like, their sole gimmick. We're gonna pull up Broly again. Broly's sole gimmick essentially is damage. He doesn't really provide a whole lot to the team. Yeah, you could argue his domain, but his domain is just buffing. What actually, you know what? Before I speak. It is giving all allies 4 key, all extreme class allies 4 key. And then the effect itself is... Does that not show up here? Where's the domain ability? Because the domain does something for extreme class allies. I think it gives them extreme class allies and enemies. They get some sort of a buff. Hold on. Oh, here we go. Yeah, extreme class enemies and allies get 10% attack and defense, and then exploding rage or movie bosses category allies get an extra 10% of stats, and then all super class enemies get, or they take 10% extra more damage. I would argue this isn't even comparable to what MUI Goku is able to offer, because not only is MUI Goku offering stats, he's also offering the ability for your characters to dodge. This is just a very low amount of stats, I would argue, especially since MUI, if we look at his super attack effect yet again, his super attack effects are buffing the rotation both offensively and defensively, depending on what super attack effect you get. The 12 key is allies attack 30% for the turn, and then the 18 key is allies 18% for the turn, and then once you transform, his 18 key is 59% attack and defense for 1 turn. A lot of utility that this character is doing, but we're seeing he has a lot of utility, but he's not really able to do damage until he supers, which is something that I feel like a lot of people aren't taking into consideration, and that is something that this clip doesn't take into consideration either. Like, yes, this is crazy. This is a brand new summonable unit doing a bunch of attacks right here in a row. They are crits, and they are doing 0 damage, meaning they are not crossing this roughly 10 million damage threshold. But once he's actually able to super and he gets all his extra buffs, again, these aren't doing anything, but it's his counters that are then able to do this massive amount of damage. And the reason I do think it's actually 10 million, if we're looking at it, because if he has 100 million HP, each one of these little bars is roughly, 10 million. And if you notice, each one of the attacks that is crossing the threshold is actually wiping away one of his bars. So that's why I think the 10 million does kind of make sense. You have to kill him in 10 hits. So again, utility. We kind of want to make sure of this. This is why a character like Cell Max or Beast Gohan are really good, because they're doing a little bit of everything. They can protect your entire team. They can protect themselves. Now, Cell Max a little bit less so. He's a character who needs 3 turns. Beast Gohan has a couple of extra, leeway. Beast has 5 rotations, and then he has his active skill. This character has 3 rotations plus the active skill, and you will probably have to prematurely activate this to protect the rest of the team, because Super Bosses, it's a very offensive team. It's not always, it's not full of a whole lot of super good defensive characters. So, let me know what you think. Do we think that damage is overrated or underrated? I can understand why, again, in the community, people think it is overrated. There's so many fights that you don't want to go too quickly because you need characters who have time to build up their passive, because a lot of characters get built up by getting hit. A lot of characters built up by doing super attacks. Not even if they necessarily stack, it's just you get 20% attack each time this character performs a super up to 100%. How many characters do we know that have that built into their passive? A lot of them. There are a lot of characters who would rather go slower than fast. And this is just one of these fights where, unfortunately, it's very toxic. And I can quickly see this becoming one of the most annoying... Like, this is what people think the Fusion Zamasu red zone is, in my opinion. Because at least with Fusion Zamasu, you would load in. If you were dead, you were dead. This one, you're going to load in. You're going to have to do at least one rotation before you die. Because this guy is going to catch so many units on slot 1 immediately. And then, oh, okay, well, you beat both of these phases, and then all of a sudden you can't dodge. You got screwed over by the locking. You didn't get UI on your rotation. You're not able to activate the domain, and boom, you're dead because you have UI Goku on that rotation. And then boom, you're all the way back here. So you wasted like 7 to 8 minutes just to die when it was a doomed run. I feel like that's going to happen a lot in this fight. And especially once you actually are able to get to this point, like, again, the Buu Saga team is going to struggle in here, man. Because those are really, really good defensive characters. Let's go ahead and pull those up since we're talking about them. Whoops, I did not mean to do that. Let's go ahead and pull them up. Because this is probably the team that gets hit the hardest by this just crazy amount of toxicity from this fight. This is one of the best characters in this game. I don't want to see any slander on this character either in my comment section. But, like, I mean, 150 stats here, another 150 stats on super attack. So they're at the 300 threshold, but we've seen so many characters at the 300 threshold, they don't do anything. And he doesn't have, like, super effective against all types built into his passive. He doesn't have crits built anywhere into his passive. He just launches a bunch of additionals. So what are you going to do when you launch 5 additionals? They're all supers. Like, let's pretend they're all supers. You're getting defense here every single time, but you're not going to be able to break through that threshold. And you really only have one character on the Buu team who can stack, and he's type disadvantage. Like, yeah, Buhan is that guy, and I feel like you could maybe play around with Buhan. You know, you could greed out a couple stacks in the first couple of phases. But even still, this is a character who, like, main defensive mechanic is dodge. What are you going to do against him in here? I feel like there's a much bigger discussion being had. Like, I feel like this is just a very toxic fight that is bringing out this discussion of the offense doesn't matter. Now, again, I am of the firm belief that a lot of defensive characters do also do a lot of damage. Let's just run down defensive characters who do a lot of damage. You. I'm counting dodge characters as being defensive. Would I argue you as a defensive character? I don't know. Do we count Super Easy Goku Black as a defensive character? I don't know. I would argue you're a defensive character. Yeah, I mean, you do decent damage, Yep, both of these do a lot. No, you do a lot of little attacks, you do a couple of big ones. You're able to do big damage. These guys are able to do big damage, big damage, big damage, big damage, big damage, big damage, big damage. A lot of these characters who are able to have some sort of a good defensive mechanic, whether that be dodge or just having a lot of baseline defense, they're able to do good damage. I feel like that is where so many people get this idea in their head that, yes, offense doesn't matter because I would much rather survive. But then there's also the argument where it's like, yeah, you can launch 5 additionals that are all 30 million crits, the enemy survives, and this guy gets hit like by a super and is dead. That's why I feel like there aren't absolutes. Both things are able to be true at the same time, and I feel like that's a conversation people are not ready to have. A character can be really good offensively and can be good very defensively and still struggle in certain events. Characters who are only good offensively can be good in fights like First Form Frieza. This is a prime example. Now, I've kind of clowned on this character a lot. I'll be honest, because their passive is not built very coherently, and their team is more than 100% dead. But this is a good unit. Stacking attack, guaranteed. They have a very powerful active skill. This is, again, one of the better characters, I would argue, for this fight specifically, because they don't have any defensive mechanics that get screwed over. Like, they're not a dodging character, so they don't really have to worry about that. Locking doesn't really affect them. I mean, getting sealed would, because then you're missing out on stacks. But this is a unit, like, who could probably tank a couple of normals in slot 1? Maybe? They could eat, like, 1. I'll be generous, so he could eat 1. Obviously not eating supers, but, like, this is a character who could probably eat, like, 1 slot 1 super. If I'm being very generous, but like, this isn't a character who can take supers, and we're gonna go down here to Broly. Broly is a very good offensive unit, but outside of being transformed, he's not eating supers. But then we get to a character like this, who, yeah, he's gonna take a lot of damage on supers, and he's not gonna be doing the most amount of damage out there, but he's a very good happy medium. Beast Gohan. I mean, I wouldn't say he's a happy medium. He's a god at both, but you understand what I'm saying. He's able to do all of these things at the same time. This is not an offensive unit. This is not a defensive unit. This is not a utility unit. This is a jack of all trades, and he's fucking awesome at all of them. We need more units like this. Now, if every unit in the game is designed like this, yes, it does get boring. We need units who do different things for different purposes to work well in different fights. And that's another thing. This is a fight where, like, some of these lesser used characters are going to be able to shine. We're going to see a huge Broly resurgence. People have kind of been clowning on him. He's not even top 10 anymore, according to Truth, which I probably agree with. I mean, he's definitely, like, still, like, a top 20 unit in the game. Like, that. We're not slandering Broly. I don't want to see a single Broly slander comment out there. But Broly can still, like, Broly can be, like, fallen off and still be good. You know what I'm saying? Like, yes, he's no longer the best Super Bosses character. Cellmax 100% takes that. But that does not mean that this is a 0 unit. That does not mean you're not going to run him on Super Bosses. But just because he's one of the better units on the team. He does really good damage. You just got to be able to protect him. But, like, multiple things can be true all at the same time. And I feel like that's a discussion that the Dokkan community really has to learn. But I feel like the real thing we need to learn is that this fight is just fucking stupid. I can't wait for this to come to global because it's going to make my brain hurt really bad. I'm not going to have fun in this event. Because the thing is, I don't think I'm going to be summoning whenever we do get the Tanabata units because we don't know when we're getting them. We don't know when we're getting Cellmax. We don't know when we're getting Jiren. We don't know when we're getting UI. We know we'll be getting Topo, which will be right after the 9th anniversary, but before the worldwide. So whatever we get during worldwide, which I probably will be summoning on because I assume they're going to be way more powerful than anything. I'm assuming they're going to be more powerful than Beast. That's going to be my prediction. I don't know if I'm going to be right or wrong, but that's going to be my guess. Hopefully there'll be a unit that will be able to do really good damage deep into the fight so that this won't be a problem. I think that this is just a dumb mechanic to throw in to this fight with everything else. Now, I don't think this would I'm actually pretty serious. I don't think that this necessarily would be as big of a deal if, like, this didn't exist and this didn't exist. Giving him all three is stupid. Like, really stupid. If you locked in this phase, this was just a big damage phase, and then this happened, I think that would be fine. Or vice versa. Locking phase, make his super attack a little bit higher, but, like, dodge nullifying in this phase, locking in this phase, and then just getting rid of this. I don't think we would really be having this discussion. But this is just a toxic fight. This is not a fun fight. I don't think. Like, because again, it's not fun to lose right out of the gate, wait 9 minutes before you have to reset. That's not fun. But let me know what you think. Let me know what you think. Is UI truly washed, or is it just a little bit more nuanced than that? Let me know in the comment section down below. But that, my friends, is going to be all for this time. I've been the SweetBro27. I'm a variety Twitch streamer and an up-and-coming PNG tuber trying to make it big in the world. I have a Twitter, a Twitch, a TikTok, and a YouTube, the links of which can all be found in the description of this video. And while you're down there, don't forget to like, subscribe, share me around, and leave me a comment, positive, negative, or indifferent. I love just any sort of interaction I can get from you guys. But yeah, that'll be all for now. So, as always, I've been the SweetBro27, and I am signing off.